The Citizen Mike Show. News. Commentary. Interviews. Citizen Mike Show starts now.
Welcome to the Citizen Mike Show. Thanks for tuning in. We do appreciate it. My name is Mike Burdinsky. On my right, the editor of the Record Journal, Ralph Tomaselli. Also at the table, Craig Fishbein, Republican Town Councilor and State Representative. Guys, we got a ton of stuff to talk about. Let's get to it real quick. The Town Council had a meeting last night, Tuesday night, where they took up the budget. It was a long meeting. We're going to have Craig give us some details on it and report on it. It was a long meeting, and in many respects, it was a redo discussion of the budget from 2 weeks ago. The headline in the Record Journal, at least the headline in the Record Journal: Wallingford Council nearly eliminates tax hike. The lead sentence: the Town Council amended the adopted 2018-19 budget Tuesday to nearly eliminate a tax increase. This is how the issue of the budget started. Started sort of modest, and then the budget cut sort of grew. We'll get Craig in on this. A motion was made to cut the budget and therefore cut taxes by the amount of newfound money, the windfall money that the state is now giving to Wallingford by $2.4 million, which was not a known number 2 weeks ago when the Town Council met. And at first, the budget cut or the tax mill rate decrease was limited to that. That motion was made. Craig, what was your reaction to that initial motion just to reduce the budget by $2.4 million?
Well, I was open to the initial motion, but then I moved to amend that motion.
Explain. What specifically were you looking for?
I was looking for a zero tax increase. I did, when we had our motions meeting a few weeks ago, I did bring a package forth to have a zero tax increase, and that failed. So I renewed my quest last evening.
Now, you had some specific amounts that you wanted to add together to come up with a total budget reduction that would yield a zero increase, right? Am I close?
Yes.
What were some of those in the list? And give us a quick explanation as to your rationale on those.
Sure. So Jim Bowes had indicated that we needed to have an adjustment of $3 million to have a zero tax increase. So I took the 2.4 from the state. So, you know, right there is most of the $3 million. There was a health insurance deduction that the mayor was saying we didn't need to have, and that was about $60,000. The Board of Education had already come to us and said there's $411,000 that, you know, we're not going to spend. We want to give back. You know, so right there you're at 2.8. And then I took two items from the Public Works budget that added up to $110,000 and had the funding be done a little bit differently with those from the cap and non-recurring account, the reserves from projects that had already been completed. They were unexpended and unappropriated and just sitting there's about $400,000 there. So I took those from there, and then I added $5,000 to the WCI facade program for
Wallingford
downtown.
Center, Inc.
Yes. They had come to the council and said, we'd like to expand our program. I'm very concerned about our downtown. So in my amendment, my proposal, I gave them the additional $5,000 that they had requested.
Now, this refinement in Craig's description isn't going in chronological order, and it's almost impossible to stay in chronological order. My understanding was, Craig, that you thought this number of $3,028,000, which your list added up to, would get you to a zero tax increase, yeah?
Yeah, I said that.
Yeah.
Zero, if not maybe a tax decrease based upon the representation of Mr. Bose.
But that was not to be.
That is correct.
Walk us through how it came to pass that you were told this wouldn't get you to a zero tax increase. Give us the history of the issue.
Well, the amendment itself was challenged, can we do that? And the law department was of the opinion that we couldn't do anything along those lines. So I had done some research and brought to the council's attention a Supreme Court case which dealt with the city of New Haven in 1985. And they have a similar charter process with regard to their budget. And they have, it says they shall adopt the budget on such and such a day.
Similar to
Wallingford.
Wallingford's charter language.
Yeah, and in that particular case, they had underestimated, well actually they overestimated state funding. They had incorrect information about an electric bill for the New Haven Coliseum and some programs for seniors. So they amended the budget after the date in the charter. And a taxpayer...
What did the Supreme Court say?
Well, the taxpayer sued, saying, I'm not going to pay the higher tax.
Yeah.
Supreme Court said that the shall is directory but not mandatory because it's not tied with any...
What's that mean?
Well,
it sounds like legal gobbledygook. What's the difference? What's the difference?
That
it's optional.
It is optional because it's not tied to a timing. I stated last night, if we were in the middle of June, right on the precipice of the new budget happening, then I think time would be of the essence. But that's not the case here. So, therefore, I think it gave us the wiggle room based upon the Supreme Court decision, and, I made the motion.
So time for a video here, and we'll give a little background. Then, Ralph, I want to get your reaction to the video. This video is a very short part of and it's video one, Bruce, only video one, of a lecture, a scolding, that Corporation Counsel Janice Small gave to the council as a pushback to this whole approach of doing something that the mayor wasn't recommending. And what was it that the mayor didn't like? The mayor liked the $2.4 million cut. The mayor was on board with that. But the mayor didn't like the fact that on Craig's list were things that the mayor didn't like at this point. And so the mayor was pretty upset, and I want to get your reaction to Janice Small. Bruce, roll that. 3, 2, 1, go.
You could have done all these things on the second Tuesday in May. It's unlike the New Haven case, which it came in after the fact from the way you described it, unless I'm understanding it wrong. You, the council, could have voted for all these changes the day you didn't vote to pass the budget. This is not something new since then.
Same thing
None
here.
of these things.
Same thing here. They adopted a budget. They followed their procedure, and then...
Right, and then things changed.
Yes.
These items didn't change. You could have taken away the health insurance the day you voted on the budget. You could have taken out the Board of Education funds. You could have, I don't even understand the WCI or the Public Works Fund. So, and I still have to read that New Haven case, and it sounds somewhat I'd have to read it myself, but...
I have a copy.
So, comparing it to using how you described it, where things became known after they had the vote, that's not the case here. You had that information. You chose not to do it.
Get the drift?
I do, and one thing I'm surprised about is, I'm surprised she hadn't looked at this New Haven case.
If she was here, she would say in her defense, why would I look at the New Haven case? Nothing has come across my desk. No one has asked me to do it. No one has sort of presented this as new material. I think her position was, this is all new stuff. The mayor said, either a few minutes before or a few minutes after, I walk into this meeting tonight and this is presented to me for the first time. This idea of a redo, of a budget redo. He appeared to be unaware, and so Janice Small was unaware that a full budget redo was going to be discussed. And so the mayor got upset and...
But didn't we talk about it on last week's show?
Yeah, but we're not the council.
No,
one
I know,
watches.
but
We have two
I'm just
people
saying,
watch our show. One
no,
of them's in Toronto.
No, but
I mean,
I think if we knew about it and Joe Marone, who sat here with us, knew about it...
But that doesn't mean it's an issue because we knew about it. It doesn't mean that it crosses her
No,
desk.
I'm not saying...
Yeah,
I'm saying to you,
Yeah.
I was surprised
Right.
that she hadn't looked at that New Haven case based on some of the things that were going on with the council agenda, some of the things that were going on with counselors. I mean, even I knew about it. So I'm just surprised she hadn't done that.
Not only do you watch the Citizen Mike
Right.
show, you're here on the
Right,
Citizen Mike
right,
show.
right.
So that's how you knew about it. What about her her frame of mind, her state of mind? Did it seem agitated to you?
Well,
or?
I think it's, I didn't see
The
before
whole-
and after,
yeah, right,
but
right.
it's very consistent with anybody, well, no, it's very consistent with most people who work for the mayor when anybody's trying to do something that the mayor doesn't want them to do.
And we're going to get it back to Craig in a second. So after watching much of her speech, I came to the conclusion that this is a lawyer, the Corporation Counsel. She's a lawyer giving a non-legal argument. It's a scold,
Yeah,
but it's
good
not
point.
based on legal precedent, a statute,
Yes,
charter
right.
language.
No.
Maybe it's based on some other legal argument yet to be made, and we'll get into the issue of a veto, in 15 or 20 minutes, if not now. But she's making the equitable argument. You could have done it, you didn't do it, and I think the mayor. Let's talk about the veto now. We'll get back to some of these other issues. I think the mayor sees the door opening to a precedent he doesn't like. A council doing the budget two different times. They don't like the first time they did it, and so they come back for a redo. I don't think he likes that. And there's some other probably small details that he doesn't like. The treatment of Craig of the capital non-recurring. Probably the Board of Ed was uncomfortable with how this went down, although they went along with it. And what I mean by that, the Board of Ed got legal advice that they should take all of the money the council gave them the first time, and they should keep that all in their budget, even though they don't need it all. And they got legal advice, don't let the council and the mayor off the hook. Take the money, keep it in the budget, keep it in the mill rate, and when you don't use $411,000, which is in Craig's list, give it back at the end of the year. Craig, chime in here.
So there's a bunch of stuff there.
Yeah, agreed.
First of all,
agreed.
before Janice even says that, Councilor Letourneau and Councilor Morgenstein asked about amendments to the budget, and we were told that they had researched it, and they were of the opinion that you could not make amendments to the budget because the date had passed. So that was the representation. So then Councilor Letourneau asked, well, do you have any cases? Do you have any statute? What portion of our charter says that? And they had no answer. We must remember that, but for the mayor coming to the council and making the agenda item, we wouldn't have been amending the budget at all post the date.
Better explain that. Back up a little bit and walk us through that.
The mayor sent correspondence to Chairman Cervoni saying, now we're getting more money from the state. We want to redo the budget. We want to make this adjustment.
Now, is that the revised letter?
Well, I have both here. So initially,
Walk us through the initial and the revised, because this adds good complication, Ralph, that you and I can chew over.
So initially it was, we're going to get this increased funding from the state, and we want to adjust the health insurance line. So it was two items initially, which opened the door, totally, So I actually called Janice yesterday afternoon and said, is there going to be a legal opinion that we can't do anything here? And she said, no, but we're of the opinion that you can't. We have nothing that really supports it.
Let me stop you here. Don't lose that trend of thought.
Yeah.
Make a note where you're at. I want to go to Ralph. So the first document the council looks at,
Right.
it looks like, to any reasonable reader, that a redo is okay.
Right.
Because the first letter said, yeah, we can revisit that health insurance item that you didn't cut last time, we can look at that again for $58,000. And we're going to, of course, discuss the $2.4 million. So you read the first set of documents to prepare for the council meeting.
Right.
You say, okay, I get it. I guess the door is open, to use Craig's word, the door is open to these kinds of changes. What I can't figure out is the mayor or Janice Small said we researched it, but now I'm wondering if they meant that with serious intent. Craig, pick up the thread.
Well, they did, Janice did reference that a couple of years ago, the legislature made an adjustment to municipal revenue, and then they expressly said that the budgets could be changed just by that amount. And she said because that was there, that by implication meant you couldn't ordinarily do that. So I looked for some sort of legislative intent, on the floor, some debate, and I found nothing that said that they had to do that. So it's almost like dicta. It's almost like it's a comment without precedent.
Without teeth, yeah.
Yeah. So at this point, Janice and I are having this discussion, and I said to Janice, well, you're doing more than just the state revenue here, and she said no. And I said, yeah, what about the health insurance thing?
Which is in the letter that you and I just talked about.
Yeah. And so she went and looked at the backup, and then, she got back on the phone and she said, oh, yeah, well, we got to talk about that. That's the last I heard. So then all of a sudden, I'm prepping for the meeting. It's 5 o'clock. I get an email with a revised item, and they take the health insurance off.
A revised letter
Oops.
that amends
Yeah.
the first letter. The first letter says, okay, we're going to talk about the $2.4 million from the state, and we're going to talk about $58,000. And the second letter says, no, we're only going to talk about the $2.4 million. So the mayor obviously at that point did not want to talk about other cuts to the budget. The mayor was only interested in a redo insofar as the $2.4 million extra money from the state mattered. Ralph, am I confusing the issue?
No,
Are you
not
with
at
us?
all.
Are you with us?
I think
Okay.
for a layperson, I think what happens here is perhaps the mayor realized that he opened the door to something that
Yeah.
he didn't want to open the door to, and then tried to shut it in the subsequent letter.
And wait till you hear what happened. Pick up the thread. How did this work out?
So
So
there
you-
was a lot of pushback at the meeting.
Were your suggested amendments well received by the council?
Ultimately, the council did approve the amendments. My amendment, 7-1, it passed after a lot of debate. Councilor Laffin voted against, and as usually is the course, Chairman Cervoni votes last, which is his choice. I think everybody expected him to vote no also, and he voted yes. So it was a 7-1 for the amendment.
I just need to interrupt because there's a lot of drama here,
Yeah.
Ralph, and remember the context is the mayor does not like this amendment.
Right.
He and his lawyer are hostile to it.
Right.
Craig just said in a rather a calm way, but it passed 7-1. This was over, I would say, a furious objection from the administration, 7-1, to add cuts to reduce the mill rate a little more, until this $3 million package, which the mayor didn't like, didn't want to discuss, didn't think that council had the right to discuss, yet it passed 7-1.
Interesting here, and I also stated this last night, in the New Haven case, a taxpayer sued because they didn't want to pay higher taxes. I argued, if we do this, who's going to sue because they want to pay lower taxes? So who's going to challenge this so that you get there? But anyway, so now we're at, the amendment passes, and now we have to adopt a mill rate. So, Mr. Bose was not prepared with all of this, to do the mill rate. So I suggested, why don't we take a break and, give Jim some time to do the mill rate. He'll come back and we'll do that. So we took like a 10-minute break, and then Mr. Bose came back, and he said, well, it's not really a zero tax increase, because you still need a $200,000 and such, which I wasn't happy about at all.
And I got to stop you. Remember, a representation was made, I believe, by the administration. If you get to $3 million, you have a zero tax increase, a zero mill rate increase. The goalposts were $3 million. Craig gets to $3 million, $3,028,000.
Yeah.
Now, when it hits the fan,
Right.
Jim Bose comes back and says it's not $3 million. You have to cut $3.2 million, another $200,000. Pick it up.
At least.
At
He was
least.
unclear
Yeah.
still about how much more.
So what happens then?
So then there's a discussion about how do we get to a zero tax increase? So Councilor Letourneau started talking about, well, let's take it from contingency, and Councilor Tester yelled out, you can't do that. So then I said, well, why can't you? So then I made a motion to take $200,000 from contingency to make a zero tax increase. I'm hoping that we'd get to. Councilor Letourneau seconded the motion. There was some debate, and then Chairman Cervoni ruled the motion out of order, which I don't understand. He really didn't explain, but my argument was if the $200,000 is going to affect the mill rate, it's totally in order because the motion on the table has to do with the mill rate.
Are you with us?
I'm with us, and I just want to point something out real quickly.
Yeah,
that,
no,
I often talk about the awesome power of the mayor in this town. And in this case, what you have is you have the law department scolding the council, not giving them a legal opinion. You have Jim Bose moving the goalpost, Jim Bose, who also works for the mayor. And then you have Vince Cervoni, as though the mayor doesn't have enough awesome power in the administration itself. He controls everybody and everything in town hall and clearly sets the marching orders, the tone. So if that isn't enough, he then has Vince Cervoni, council chairman, throwing up obstacles.
So I need to be your foil.
Go ahead.
I need to be your foil a little bit. I don't think there was a conference between Vince Cervoni and the mayor about ruling Craig's motion out of order. We'll ask Craig to weigh in on this. I think it's more spur of the moment, ad hoc, and the rationale for the ruling of out of orders, and I hate gerunds, the rationale for the decision to say it was out of order was that there were two motions at the end of this meeting. One was the package of cuts and additions that Craig drew up that was approved by the council 7-1, and that had the numbers, and that was voted on, and that was ultimately passed. Now you move on to the next phase, which is the mill rate. During the mill rate debate, there was an attempt by Craig and John Letourneau and maybe others to revisit the list of numbers and add another number in. So it was a technical argument by Vinnie Cervoni to say the time for listing the numbers that would add up to 3.2 had come and gone, and now we're on the mill rate phase. And so that would be a rational basis. And I'm just trying to...
No, but it's an arguable point, right?
I think it's an arguable point.
So he could have went either way on it.
I think he probably could have gone either way, and...
it just seems coincidental that there's a lot of...
The tempers were very high.
Right.
Vinnie Testa was furious.
Okay.
I mean, we glossed over that. He was furious. The mayor was furious about this attempt. The mayor gave one of his impassioned, angry lectures about this attempt to take money out of the contingency.
Right, and I want to get back to Craig, but what's kind of getting lost here too is that what these counselors, these 7 counselors, are trying to do is lower people's tax bill.
And I'm going to be your foil again. And Janice Small said, "Why didn't you do it 2 weeks ago?"
Well, right, but there's a lot of things
I'm just trying to...
Right, no, I think there's all, these things are all, but I don't, what shouldn't get lost here is they were trying to lower people's tax bill. That doesn't give them carte blanche to do it, but that was their goal, which is a worthy political one.
Yeah, I tend to agree that the issue is serious enough so that Vinnie Cervoni could have revisited or reopened that list of numbers. I think Craig's attempt to find another $200,000 would have failed. So you spend another 10 minutes and watch it go down in flames. You know,
Right.
I mean,
Okay.
that's the worst case scenario. Maybe it would have passed. I don't know, but just the mood in the room with Vinnie Testa vehemently against it. Just
Well, I don't mean to change, but
Yeah.
Craig, I bring up this, but did you feel like the deck was, or that there were, did you feel like the mayor was exercising his power to somehow prevent you from getting to lowering taxes?
Yes.
Okay.
I thought there was a lot of obstruction.
with a point of order, with ruling it out of order.
Through the rule-
No, but I'm just saying.
Because that's how we started.
Right, no, but I'm
discussion.
saying it the
Throughout
way
the
it's been
process.
described to me even, and I wasn't there, I'm having that feeling, and I just want to make sure that I'm not off
Well,
base here.
And it wasn't, I mean, I think it was many people in that room. I mean, Counselor Laffin was trying in a nice way to say that I was sandbagging the law department, you know, and, I was trying to deal with that. And, so, but ultimately with regard to, what happened next was I challenged the ruling of Chairman Cervoni under Rule 24 of Robert's Rules that I was out of order. That's when Counselor Testa went just ballistic. Was yelling something about, you've already won, why do you keep pushing, and I finally said something like, well, if you got somewhere to be, go home, I'm here to do my job.
It's throwing gasoline on the fire,
Right.
Well, I was very calm, I mean,
Right.
throughout the
Tone of voice
exchange.
was, yeah.
Right.
But ultimately, my overture did not get a second. I haven't looked. I tried to today. I got way
That's
late.
an important point. Craig wanted to reopen the list of numbers to bring it to a no mill
Right,
rate increase.
right.
He made the motion that would discover the 200,000. No one seconded the motion.
No,
Right.
they seconded the motion. They didn't second my challenge
Yes,
of the chair.
that's what I meant.
And
Thank you.
I don't recall whether or not that requires a second,
Yeah.
quite frankly. I haven't had a chance to look at
Well,
that.
it certainly requires a majority vote, and if
Yes.
no one was going to speak up, then it was going to.
And maybe what was going on, I didn't see the dynamics,
Yeah.
but that people thought, well, we got it down to $8. Let's not push this.
Well, that was some of
People
it.
are angry,
That was some
and
of it.
right. So that may have been what was going on.
Okay, so sort of wrap this up to the final vote, and what finally happened, then we'll talk about the Board of Ed and the veto.
Well, because there was a tax increase, I voted no, and everybody else voted yes.
Now, when it came to the mill rate
Yes.
vote, how did you vote on that?
Well, that was ultimately the only vote that was left.
Yes.
So after the amendment, the only vote that happened was the mill rate, and because there was a tax increase, I voted no.
Okay. Were you by yourself on that?
Yes.
Okay. Now, the Board of Ed, I think, was in a ticklish situation
Yeah.
because their initial position, based allegedly, as Stephen Colbert says, allegedly, based upon advice from their attorney, having got a certain amount in the budget the prior 2 weeks, including the $411,000, which is in issue in our discussion now, having gotten the $411,000, it seems that their advice was to hold on to the $411,000 and not consent to a cut in the Board of Ed budget.
Right.
Okay, that
Right.
was their initial position. Apparently, not apparently, there was a meeting with the mayor and representatives of the Board of Ed, and this discussion was hashed out, and it was somewhat heated, and there was no meeting of the minds. And the model that the Board of Ed intended to follow, based upon advice of counsel, is this $411,000 that's an issue, the Board of Ed would keep in its budget, which doesn't help a mill rate reduction if they keep it in their budget. If they give it back at the end of the year, it doesn't help reduce the mill rate. I don't think at the time the Board of Ed was that sensitive to that. I mean, but in the course of this council meeting, this $411,000 that the Board of Ed got became very, very important. And we have Roxanne McKay, and this is video 2, Bruce, and let's tee that up and see what she has to say. I'm going to go to you as to what was her frame of mind. Bruce, 3, 2, 1, go.
Council, you have a desire as an entity to make that adjustment now and take that 411 from us, fine, that's fine. But our understanding is from our attorney is that we actually need to just carry that through the fiscal year and show it as that surplus, and then you would just reduce us that amount. How you want to show it from an accounting standpoint, that's fine. But
And of course, it went on. I didn't capture the whole thing, but I think it was at this point that the chairlady of the Board of Education, Roxanne McKay, kind of caved and said, "Okay, if you want to cut our budget," she said, "that's fine. Play in your own sandbox. That's fine." And that opened the door to a big chunk of money that could be used to help reduce the mill rate. The 2.4 from the state.
Right.
Now we have $400,000 from the Board of Ed and other bits and pieces that Craig mentioned to equal the $3 million, and the search for the other $200,000 was unsuccessful. Craig, Mayor going to veto?
I don't know, but it's an interesting question. Why was Dr. Menzo and Roxanne McKay there last night?
Oh, I think they probably knew that.
There was no agenda item.
I know, but I think they probably knew that their names would be mentioned.
I was very happy that they were there because I got to talk to Dr. Menzo before the meeting and just get reassurance that they didn't need the 411. So without them there, I think there would have been a problem, quite frankly.
Well, there's no question. I don't think there's any question. They didn't need the money. The question was, did they feel that their hands were tied? They had to keep the money in their budget. And as of the Saturday before this meeting, like 3 days before, it's clear their hands were tied based upon advice of counsel. Then at this meeting, Roxanne McKay takes a scissors and their hands are no longer tied, and she says, reduce our budget if you have to. That was the flip. That was the change of position. I want to talk about a veto. Is the mayor gonna, you're in as good a position now as anybody. Is the mayor ticked off enough to not like what he saw, the arguments, encroaching on his prerogative, the statements of all that?
All right, so just to make sure I'm answering it. So if the mayor vetoes the budget, does the tax rate revert the 2-point-some-odd million? So, okay.
It goes back to his original budget in April.
So in essence, the mayor would be increasing the average homeowner's taxes by about $180 a year.
I guess I can't.
I think that's about the. All right,
okay.
It's somewhere. I mean, in other words, politically, even the mayor, who probably feels very safe in his position and doesn't have a whole lot to worry about, I don't see how he vetoes a budget and increases people's taxes.
Well,
and give us the opportunity to override his veto.
Well, right. I think there's that part of it too, but good point, Craig.
Well, his lawyers are telling the mayor that council is exceeding their authority. That was one of the dominant themes of the meeting on Tuesday night. The council is exceeding their authority. How does the mayor let that go? And the mayor agreed. The mayor weighed in very passionately. You can't do this. You shouldn't be doing it. You can't do this.
I just would. I personally, if I had to predict here,
that's what I'm asking.
Yeah, I would say the mayor is not going to veto the budget.
Well, how does he slap the council's hand to make sure they don't do this again? Those upstart councilors wanted a redo.
Mike, for once, why does he have to slap anybody's hand? Because why? Listen.
I'm only can play the cards I'm dealt.
I guess what I'm advocating for, and maybe it's simplistic in the midst of all this legal argument, is that in the end, I think the council did the right thing, not just empirically right, but for the politically right. And why can't that just stand? Is that too simplistic?
I don't know. Maybe by the next show we'll know whether or not he's vetoing it or issuing an opinion and saying, I'm going to let it go this time.
Right. Right, okay, you could say
But
that.
don't you think for a minute that
All right.
I'm going to let you have redos and strange opinions
Okay.
from New Haven?
Well, I guess he's
and-
entitled to that. I guess he's entitled to do that. I wouldn't fault him that.
Craig, you got the final word on this issue, then we'll go to some state issues.
I just wanted to say, I mean, the
Yeah.
opinion is not, the opinion has to do with New Haven, but ultimately it's the Connecticut Supreme Court, so it's, it's the highest law in the state.
So the Hartford Courant and other news outlets, including Connecticut News Junkie, presented these lists of legislative measures that were passed, some that weren't passed, with little synopsis of what the acts were. Let's talk about those. And what I sent to both you guys was the Christine Stewart and Jack Kramer piece that appeared in Connecticut News Junkie. A pretty good
Yeah, it
website.
was.
They got a good links.
Very well done.
A lot of good links to
Yeah.
that. And they categorize it as winners and losers, and we've captured maybe 10 or 12 legislative initiatives, and we're going to ask Craig what he thought and where his position was. And the first one I want to talk about is healthcare workers. This is what the website says, Connecticut News Junkie. An estimated 19,000 workers who care for the developmentally disabled will be receiving their first raises in a decade. The House and Senate passed this bill increasing wages for these workers to $14.75 an hour. The legislation will provide for a wage of at least $14.75 an hour for all workers and a one-time 5% raise for workers who make more than that. There's costs, right?
Okay.
When you have...
Of course there are.
There's costs.
You can't just...
The raises are expected to cost the state about $22.8 million a year after the 50% Medicaid reimbursement is applied. Let's not get into that. With a January 1 start date, the amount required in fiscal year 2019 would be 11.4. I'm not asking you to memorize the amounts, but whenever we talk about a benefit, there's always cost. Craig, you said no.
I did say no. And the follow-up question is why. On a few planes. First of all, these individuals that provide the services, very important services, don't work for the state, but they are paid through DSS. So in order for this whole thing to be funded, it costs a lot of money, which we don't have. The threat, and we voted on this on a Friday, I think it was that they were going to strike on Monday. So that's the first time that I had even heard about this thing. Okay. So then when I got the contract, I see there's a no strike provision in the contract. So, the threat is baseless. Ultimately, I didn't feel that we should be doing this at this time and voted no. And just so it was an 88 to 62. So certainly not an overwhelming vote, 88 in favor.
There's something called the National Popular Vote Initiative. And after I read this piece, we may have to explain a little bit more. Connecticut is the latest addition to the National Popular Vote Compact, embracing the idea that the winner of the popular vote should win the Electoral College, should win the presidency. The Connecticut House and Senate gave approval, and then the governor signed into law this bill, which adds Connecticut to the National Popular Vote Compact. There haven't been enough states yet to join to make it effective. Now, what does this mean? I think the theory, but after I opine what I think the theory is, I'm going to go to Craig. I think the idea is that instead of the presidency following the Electoral College vote, which doesn't always reflect the popular vote nationally, the candidate for president who wins the popular vote deserves to be president, and the Electoral College will then follow who wins the popular vote. Now, that means if you live in Connecticut, your vote actually matters, even though it's a solid blue state, and someone who lives in a red state, voting Democratic matters because all those red state, blue state, Democratic votes are lumped together to get the popular total. And whoever gets the popular total will win the Electoral College from the states joining the compact. Craig, I did my best to explain that, but if I erred or if I muffed it.
Well, it's a double-edged sword.
Yeah.
Because ultimately, Connecticut may feel for whatever reason that one candidate is better than the other and would like to send its electoral individuals for that particular candidate, as opposed to California and Texas, which is a lot more population, directing Connecticut to send their individuals. Ultimately, though,
You voted no.
I voted no because I believe this compact to be unconstitutional.
Okay.
And the basis of that is Article 1, Section 10 of the Federal Constitution, which says that no compact between states is valid or legal unless Congress approves of that compact.
Okay, let's
And
not get
we
into the
debated-
weeds on
Yeah,
that,
we
but,
debated that on the floor, and they
okay.
admitted that Congress has never approved of this, so
Yep.
there's a lot of problems with it.
There's something called conservation. Craig voted yes on, and the reason I want to discuss this, even though it's not a marquee issue, it's a conservation issue, is that it's going to be on the ballot in this November.
Right.
And voters will be confronted with this very strange question, and they may not have sufficient guidance unless they watch the Citizen Mike Show. But here is some context for this initiative. As I understand it, there was a few years back an attempt by a very powerful legislator in Hartford that, now, this is a somewhat fictional recreation,
Right,
and I've
no,
got a little
right.
rhetorical flourish here,
Okay.
okay? But had a colleague or a friend who was a developer, and the state owns some valuable land, and that developer lusted after that very valuable state land, and so this very powerful legislator put in a rat in some unrelated legislation.
Right.
A rat is sort of a secretive midnight
Right.
thing where a bill that favors a special interest is slipped in,
Right.
and among bills that could be hundreds or thousands of pages, and the following week, legislatures can discover this rat, what they voted on, or something they never expected. Well, there's a very controversial land swap where the state of Connecticut got the raw end of the deal because no one really knew what was going on, and this initiative is to add transparency so that these rats can't happen unless there's a hearing. You voted yes.
Yeah, in fact, I don't think it went far enough. I think this only has to do with selling property. I think it should be the acquisition of property also. But we just had this in this session. In Griswold, it was a piece of property owned by somebody who works in the Secretary of State's office. And we bought it, the state bought it for a shooting range for the state police. And there's been a lot of objection to this whole thing. And there's been no transparency. And I actually had Dora Oshiro before Public Safety, which I sit on, and cross-examined her as to their due diligence and basically showed they didn't do any due diligence. So it should have been totally a referendum, and was totally in support of this.
So when you see this on the ballot, I think we all at this table agree, vote yes.
Right.
It adds transparency. Okay. Gun safety. Christine Stewart and Connecticut News Junkie writes, Connecticut will be one of the handful of states that has already taken action to ban bump stocks, which are devices that increase the rate of fire for semi-automatics. Lawmakers were prompted to pass the bill following the October 2017 shooting at a Las Vegas concert that left 58 people dead and hundreds of others injured. Police say bump stocks were used in that crime. It was a lopsided vote in favor, and I think Governor Malloy, now has signed it. Craig, you voted no. Give us your take on it.
I did. First of all, the police have not said that bump stocks were used in that crime.
They were, though, right? There's no doubt about that.
They were there.
Yeah.
They have not issued a report that said they were used. But anyway,
Yeah.
we go beyond that.
Okay.
Spent a lot of time on this legislation this session. I actually led the debate in opposition. One of the two chilling things about this, first of all, we're confiscating as opposed to assault weapons, whatever that is. We allow individuals to keep assault weapons, but we don't allow them to keep this implement that does absolutely nothing. And Willie Tong, who was on the other side of the debates, argued generally you could take anything away from the people under the police power. I think that this was just a feel-good piece of legislation, does absolutely nothing, and should be regulated by the ATF like machine guns.
Ralph, bump stocks. He wants to keep them legal. Legal and plentiful. Buy as many as they'll sell. Sell as many people will buy.
I don't know what to say.
Okay. Victims of domestic violence is a bill that had a big play in the Record Journal, I think, right?
Yes.
Actually,
Craig,
all over the country.
really? All right. Craig, you voted no on this. Here's the write-up. The passage of this bill means that police will have the authority to determine the primary aggressor in domestic violence situations rather than arresting the victim along with the abuser. According to a report by the Connecticut Coalition Against Domestic Violence, since the passage of the dual arrest law in 1987, Connecticut police officers have been arresting both parties involved in domestic violence incidents 20% of the time. That's more than double the national average. Craig, you voted no. How come?
First of all, I've represented a lot of women in domestic violence situations. To have to designate somebody as the primary aggressor indicates that the other individual is an aggressor and not a victim. I think that that is counterintuitive. That's one reason. Where I got into a little bit of trouble, Record Journal probably wouldn't have even written about it had I not said truthfully that sometimes people use claims of domestic violence to get a leg up in divorce situations.
But is that enough? Is that enough to vote against the bill? People can always abuse the law, twist the law, get around the law.
There's no law that says the police officer has to arrest both people. They are given the discretion.
That's true. They're given the discretion. I think what the background is, the context is, police departments, rightly or wrongly, through lack of training or laziness or whatever, are too ready to arrest both.
And that was one of the things I argued.
Too ready to arrest both when they really shouldn't be. They should be investigating who really caused this and who started it. This bill is a start in that direction to ease pressure from police departments so they don't feel they have to arrest both. Find out who is really at fault. They're free to arrest both under the law. They're free to arrest both, but they're also more free to find out who the primary aggressor was. You were the sole vote in the House against this.
I'm one of the few people.
Everyone was wrong, but you were right.
I think I'm the only person in the House that actually represents people on both sides of these cases. Come with me to court on January 4th. I have a continued restraining order case that I'm defending, which state police officers coming to testify in, and you'll see what the truth is. So, anyway, I don't agree with what this law did. And I said people are not different from state to state.
Right.
The only variable is the police officer. So it is more than likely the training.
I'm trying to figure out how your rationale translates to a no vote. You claim, and it may be true, that some people will some spouses will call the police and claim they were attacked when they weren't, when they were the attacker. But that doesn't address, so what's wrong with this new rule which says the police really should be investigating, and if they can identify a primary aggressor, arrest the primary aggressor?
They can do that now.
Yeah,
there is no difference.
But they're not.
Well, that's training. That's not. This law did not change that. So.
Pay equity. Let's go to pay equity.
Okay.
You didn't want to get in on that conversation.
Well, no, it's not that I didn't want to get. I thought you guys covered it well.
Pay equity. This made the Record Journal, I think, on votes of 142 to 4. Is that a misprint? 104. Let me get my glasses on.
142 to 4,
yeah,
35 to 1.
Not a misprint. In the House and the Senate, respectively, this bill was passed to prohibit employers from asking a potential employee about their pay history. The bill is entitled An Act Concerning Pay Equity because it is thought it will help women receive higher wages throughout their career, even though it applies to everyone regardless of gender. Craig, you voted no. How come?
Because it does absolutely nothing with regard to pay equity. Employer paying somebody a different salary merely based upon their gender has been illegal for 55 years or so.
But you're looking for remedies here. You're looking for ways to address it, how to mitigate the situation.
Actually, potentially this might make it a little bit more difficult to prove a case. Because
walks through
if one of the sole questions that's asked at the interview is how much did you make at your last job, you're setting somewhat of a bar, of a scale. If you don't ask about that and then you're paid less based upon your gender, isn't it an easier case to potentially prove?
No, absolutely not. So here's the scenario. You have a woman who has been underpaid all her life. She's been underpaid in part because she's been discriminated against, because employers look at her and say, well, you're a mother and
Right.
you're not as reliable, and
Right.
all these things, and societal, all this kind of stuff. And so she's been underpaid all her life, and she wants to hit the glass ceiling and break through it and get paid what she deserves.
Right.
And she doesn't want her past pay history to be counted against her.
Right.
She doesn't want her past the fact that she was underpaid be a mark against her to give an employer the excuse. I hope the Record Journal doesn't do this, Ralph. Well, I'm making the
Right.
numbers up. You've been making $60,000 in the past. I think you'll be happy with 70, when the true salary should have been 80.
Right.
And that's what this bill is trying to address. You disagree, Craig?
I totally disagree, because what's to stop that person from saying, I made 90?
What the employee? Because
Yeah. What's to stop that? Nothing.
so it's on the basis of potential deception. You voted no.
I think this does absolutely nothing, and we were told it does absolutely nothing.
Well, by the business interests,
No.
by the
actually,
corporate side.
No, it was actually more than that.
So you want to ask,
But this does not-
you want
this
to
does
ask
not preclude-
women what their pay history
No, I know.
was to be fair to the women.
I
Is that
don't
the
want to
argument?
get involved in any of that, but this does
Okay.
not preclude one from asking an individual, perhaps a woman, I mean, you're taking the gender,
Yeah. Yeah.
how much would you like to make?
Yeah, and they'll tell.
Nothing
That's right.
stops that question.
That's right. That's right.
This law doesn't stop that.
No, that's fine. How much would you like to make?
That's,
and I
that's
think
a proper question.
it is a very proper question, and an employee should come out and say, I'm a reporter with a lot of experience, Ralph, and I think I should be making $80,000 as a
Right.
reporter. And you're going to say, how much did you make that other paper in Yazoo City, Mississippi?
Right.
And that poor person has to say, well, I made $12,000, and you say, well, we'll give
Right.
you 15. When the going rate could be a lot more.
And they can, under this legislation, they can voluntarily tell.
It's an irrelevant question, but I'm glad you, go ahead.
And I don't want to slow things up,
Yeah,
but,
no,
you
no.
know, these last three, bump
Sure.
stocks, domestic violence, pay equity,
Right.
clearly, Craig knows the bill inside and out.
Sure.
And I'm sitting between two lawyers. So I'm going to go
How
careful.
lucky can you
How
get?
can I get?
I mean,
I guess what I'll come at it,
Yep.
you know, from a layperson's point of view and from a political point of view, and ask Craig, you know, I can see a case for I could see a scenario where all these votes could be used against you at election time. And I don't know what the question is, but I mean, you must have pondered that, and are you worried about it?
No,
Or,
I don't vote to get reelected. I vote because I've read the language. Does it make sense for that law to be in effect? And I vote accordingly.
We're going to skip some. You're against tolls, Craig?
Yes. Given our current situation, I do have a caveat on tolls that would be interesting.
What?
You know, I'm a proponent of usage taxes.
And this is a use tax.
This is a use tax,
Yeah.
but the problem is the income tax. So if we had a constitutional amendment that kept our income tax at a very, very low rate, then I would consider talking about tolls. But I can't under the current situation.
Recreational pot. Good idea?
No, for two reasons. First of all, it's still illegal federally.
Okay. This didn't come up for a vote, by the way.
No.
Never made it.
No,
Yeah.
but more overriding concern is, how does a police officer tell in the field that somebody is under the influence when they pull somebody over in a car? The only way they can tell is to draw the blood. And I'm very concerned with police officers drawing blood of people in the field. So, absent those two things, I'm open to the discussion. So the federal, there have to be a change federally, and there have to be some sort of test to allow for being able to ascertain in the field that somebody's under the influence.
Well, of course, if it's legal, no, there's no reason to draw blood.
No,
If-
because legal, I mean, alcohol is legal,
Yeah, but
but we have a rule. You know, you can't operate a motor vehicle over a certain BAC.
Okay.
And in Colorado, they have a rule like that.
Okay.
It's .06, I think,
Yeah.
is the BAC. So yeah, legal, but you can't operate it.
So let's talk about gambling, casinos,
Let's.
whether or not you're in favor of expansion, and sports betting.
Okay, so I sit on public safety. We have cognizance over gambling. So I've been immersed in this. I've been in favor of the open bidding process from the beginning.
Open bidding for casino operators.
Yes, I think once I voted against the casino in East Windsor because it's off tribal lands. I think the original compact had to do with tribal lands. Had a lot of fights about that because we actually defined tribal lands in the compact. There would be no need to do that if it wasn't, you know, tribal lands. So there's been a lot of discussion about Bridgeport. My problem with Bridgeport, I'm in support of a Bridgeport casino, but one of the bills that we passed in the House actually had an RFP for a Bridgeport casino. But the problem is, how is somebody going to bid if East Windsor isn't built and we don't know the effect upon gambling of East Windsor? You know, you can't, basically. So there was a bill that we had in public safety which put the halt to all casinos, East Windsor, everything. And let's examine this. Let's do an RFP. Let's see what we can do. And I'm totally in support of that.
If the choice was East Windsor, which I believe is a sort of a modest casino, or Bridgeport, which is a more grand type, and that was the choice, would you be in favor of a Bridgeport casino, and the third choice is no casino at all?
If we were going to have a casino, it would be definitely Bridgeport because I like the destination thing.
Yeah.
My wife and I, we actually took a vacation for a week at Mohegan one year.
Yep.
Because, you know, the restaurants, the shopping, you know, you go to a show, all that stuff.
So
East Windsor doesn't do that.
So are you 60-40 in favor of a Bridgeport casino?
Yeah, my concern is that I see a lot of people that have gambling debt. You know.
And sports betting.
Okay, so sports betting is of concern to me, and I don't know how I'm going to vote on this. I'm concerned about the integrity of the game.
Yeah, right. Okay.
Point
shaving.
Yeah, you know, or
It's an old
baseball.
problem.
Right.
One of the things, like in
No.
Japan, that you can bet on in baseball is the next pitch going to be a ball or a strike?
Oh, brother.
You know,
Yeah.
and that's problematic. You know, I read a lot about Pete Rose and Bart Giamatti and all that stuff, and I know we're going to be talking about it, so
Ralph.
I don't know.
Yes.
Sports betting, casinos. Are you in favor of a Bridgeport casino?
I
And sports
think,
betting?
well, no, I think the casino market is saturated.
Okay.
And I think if people want to bet on sports, they're going to, so I'm okay with the state of Connecticut. Kind of like marijuana, I think they're going to buy that too, and it goes down a little easier if I know we're getting a little tax revenue from it.
So sports betting sounds okay to you, but the casinos anywhere, not so much.
I just think it's oversaturated. Anybody who goes to Mohegan and Foxwoods, you can see they're overbuilt.
Yeah.
They're adjusting, but I'm concerned about that.
We go down, I don't know how much time we have, but you know, we go down on a Saturday night, like once a month,
Right.
just to go to dinner.
Right.
You know, throw $20 in a slot machine and come home.
Right.
You know, it's entertainment. You know, we
Agreed.
don't, you know.
We got to make that the final
Yeah.
word because we are out of time. Craig, thanks for coming on the
Thank you for
Citizen
having me.
Mike Show. Yeah, we had a good time. Thank you for watching the Citizen Mike Show. Don't forget, we are on YouTube. Go to YouTube. Plug in the Citizen Mike Wallingford channel. We can send you a direct link to the show. Also, just let me know that you want to contact WPAA TV, and we can arrange that. Thanks, everybody. Good night.